Good evening. It is Thursday, March 19th, 2020 at 6 p.m. I am hereby calling the Finance Committee meeting to order. We'll call the roll. Mr. Bellin.
I'm here.
Mr. Fury.
Here.
Mr. Barr. I am here. Also in attendance tonight, the Law Director, the Mayor, the Finance Director, the Clerk of Council, and the rest of my peers are here in person on Council. And Ms. McPherron is joining us by teleconference this evening. Do we have any audience participation? Okay, having none, we're going to move on to item number 3, approval of the 2:25:20 and 3:10:20 minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
A second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the minutes are approved as written. Item number 4, 2020 permanent budget updates. Is that you, Ms. Butchie-Gross?
Yes, that's me.
All right, thank you.
So the only additional update that we had from the last time we talked at Finance was a $36,000 addition to Fitness Center. Reason being is while they are shut down, they're going to try to get a couple large repairs done. Derek talked about them at the last council meeting, I think it was. One is the air rotation unit and the other is the sand filters. So we just put it into the budget as opposed to passing the budget and immediately having an appropriation amendment on emergency.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with
Mr.
that.
Fury?
Sarah and I have already talked about this. I have no problem with it.
Sure.
Okay.
And all the other adjustment that we've talked about with the special events and then all the other ones before that are all in there.
It's
as
all
well.
taken
All
into
those
account.
changes have been
It's all
taken
in
into
there.
account.
Mhm.
Okay. So if there's no further discussion on that, we move on to item number 5, which is recommending the 2020 budget to be passed by council.
I make a motion that we make a recommendation to council to accept the 2020 budget as submitted.
I'll second the motion. Any discussion further?
Yeah, you know, I mean, you have pointed out several times, Mr. Barr, I just want to thank the members of my fellow members of the Finance Committee, as well as members of Council, as well as Mr. Butchie-Gross. I mean, we've gone through this line by line, fund by fund, to make sure that we are doing everything that we possibly can to be, cognizant of how we spend the citizens' money. So, this is a good budget, and I'm happy to submit it to Council.
Any other comments from members of council present this evening?
I just want to say I appreciate the Finance Committee and all the work that you guys have done, and I know you've been keeping us up to date on everything that you're doing with the budget, and I appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you.
Thanks for that.
Any other discussion, Mr. Fury?
The budget that is going to be that we're going to pass or vote on tonight is set at $53,303,000, and that is a 1.06 increase over last year. When you look at the salaries, which are our largest expense, for 2.5, healthcare went up. It's an extremely aggressive budget. And in the past, people talked about we need a balanced budget in Twinsburg. To start with this budget, and again, we typically do not, we budgeted 53,303, but we rarely spend all that. Typically, it's in the 95, 96%. As submitted tonight, we're looking at, if we spent everything and got the revenue that we expect, a surplus, or we would bring in an additional $536,000 to our general fund. So it's been a long time since we've had a surplus coming in, and it's been since the income tax was reduced. So thank everybody that was involved in this. I think it was a really well done document and process.
Okay, wonderful. So there is a motion on the floor to recommend the 2020 budget be passed by council, made by Mr. Fury, seconded by me. Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
I'm a yes. All right, so we'll recommend that this evening. Item number 6, potential impact of COVID-19 on city revenues and expenses.
I don't have a lot of information on this at this time because we're just not sure what's going to happen. I just want to bring it to Finance Committee and Council's attention that there are probably going to be a few line items that we come back to you to adjust, particularly unemployment. and we're gonna keep an eye on our revenues. We're just not sure of the impact yet. Regional income tax agencies in constant communication. They're letting us know, they're keeping us up to date. They're doing the best that they can. And we'll just keep talking about it at every meeting, and I'll let you guys know what the income tax collections look like as they come in.
To date, has Rita delayed or done anything with their collections at this point?
No, there's
Okay.
been no delay in payment. I do believe they have a lot of employees working from home right now. They have closed the doors to on-site taxpayer visits.
Okay.
You can still call in, you can still e-file,
Okay.
but there's no public access at this time.
Thank you.
Mr. Fury, anything on that?
I have no questions, thank you.
Thank you for keeping us updated on that. This is going to be a fluid situation, I'm sure, over
Yes.
the next several months, so appreciate your efforts. Moving on to item number 7, comments or questions. Mr. Bellin?
No, sir.
Mr. Fury?
No, not tonight, thank you.
Any members of council? Comments, questions?
No, sir.
Okay. Item number 8, miscellaneous. Mr. Fury?
None this evening, thank you.
Mr. Bellin?
Nothing, sir.
All right, I have nothing. The next meeting date of the Finance Committee is currently scheduled for April 28th, 2020 at 6 p.m. in council chambers. And that brings us to our adjournment at 6:06 p.m.
All right. It is 6:06 on Thursday, March 19th, 2020, and we're going to call the special council meeting to order. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Bellin?
Here.
Mr. Barr?
Here.
Ms. McFerrin?
Here.
Mrs. Walker?
Here.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Here.
Mr. Scafidi?
Here.
All right. Next, please rise for the invocation and pledge allegiance. Almighty and eternal God, you know the longings of men's hearts, and you protect their rights. In your goodness, watch over those in authority so that people everywhere may enjoy freedom, security, and peace. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next up is the approval of minutes from the March 10th, 2020 meeting. Everybody had a chance to take a look at those?
Make a motion that we accept the minutes as submitted.
Mr. Fury makes a motion. May I have a second, please?
I second.
Mrs. Walker seconds. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
All right, the minutes from the March 10th, 2020 meeting are approved 7-0. Next up is the mayor's report.
Yes, good evening, council, residents that are watching this. My report really is going to be just a focus on what the city's efforts are as it relates to the COVID-19 crisis that's hitting our community. I've been in contact with council for the past 2 weeks. We've been dealing with the directives that have come from the state level, having them adapted to our businesses, to our operations here. It changes every single day. I want to thank all my department heads, all the employees here, because it's been very challenging to keep operations going, trying to limit the amount of exposure that is presented potentially within our doors here. We have 180 plus full-time employees along with 100 plus part-timers. And so we have become as proactive as we can in preventing the spread of this virus both within our community and within our employee base here at the city. Some things that we've done, I've put out, some of this may be duplicative of some of the communications I've sent out, but we've closed all our public buildings to the public, and that was done beginning of this week, end of last week. We've closed the fitness center. That was a directive. We actually closed that prior to the directive from Governor DeWine. We've also closed our senior center. That was done really the first day this really started to grow in the state of Ohio. As of Monday, our golf course is going to be closed for at least a 2-week period. And one thing that we implemented in the last 24 hours is we've done a mandated quarantine of all of our city employees. So this is a 14-day period that's recommended by the CDC in an effort to minimize contact with employees and allow those that potentially are infected to show symptoms outside of interacting with other employees here at the city. In doing that, we've scaled back our operations to just our essential operations. For example, our fitness center has no employees reporting there. Our community center and senior center, where Parks and Rec or House, has no employees pointing there. We have no assigned employees to our building department, to our engineering department. We have department heads that may be floating in and out based on needs of their department. We have essential staff here. I'll be here, law director. Our finance director will be here. And so we have, of course, our police department and our fire department still at full operations. I want to commend them for the work that they're doing, because this is a 24-hour operation that really impacts the safety and welfare of our community. Our wastewater treatment plant, all those guys are reporting. We have to make sure that plant stays operational 24 hours a day. And, you know, it's going to be a challenging 2 weeks, but I think this has been done in the best interest of both the community as a whole and our employee base. We want to keep people as healthy as possible. We've started taking the temperature of all our employees. That's going to start probably tomorrow as they enter in and out. I know that was suggested by the governor yesterday. We have acquired enough thermometers to do that, so that will be going on. We're going to be doing everything that we possibly can to assist the employees during this time. So the federal bill that came out last night, we've actually worked with our employees, and we've created an 80-hour sick bank for our employees to accommodate this quarantine period. And we've made it fair to all employees. We're going to be working through tomorrow a way to be compliant with the triggering of how we treat our part-time employees under this federal bill. So we're going to be working through that tomorrow. Hopefully department heads are able to notify their part-time employees of that. But again, this is just kind of a moving target that continues to change on a daily basis. Hopefully we're doing everything we can to be as proactive as possible and just limit the amount of I guess infected people that may end up at our city. I know it's going to continue to grow. We've seen every 3 days the numbers have seemed to double in the state of Ohio. I know from yesterday to today we had 32 or 33 more cases reported. There's a lot of tests, I think, that are still out. I'm having communications with Summit County, other mayors. We're getting information from federal representatives, and so we're doing everything we can to stay on top of it and get information out as quickly as possible. But I just want to let the residents know that, thank you for all your patience and consideration through all of this. I know it's challenging for everyone to be home, but please try to limit your interaction with other people during this time. As we can see this continue to grow, I think we're going to see more directives come from the governor, so we're kind of waiting on a day-by-day basis with that. But we'll stay on top of it. If there's other things that we need to implement here, we will work at doing that in an effort just to really try to safeguard our community and our employees as much as possible. So I want to thank council, department heads, all the employees again for all the work that they've done. It's been a long couple of weeks, but 2 weeks from now seems like an eternity with the work we're putting in and the things that are happening. But we'll all get through it, and you know, I know that city will probably end up stronger and better as a result of it. So thank you for everything.
Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Next up is legislation. First is ordinance 16, 2020.
The permanent appropriation ordinance for 2020 approved by council from estimates submitted by the mayor, providing for the ordinary expenses and other necessary expenses of the city of Twinsburg, Ohio during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2020, and declaring an emergency.
I'd like to make a motion to put ordinance 16, 2020 on its third and final reading and declare an emergency. May I have a second?
A second.
Mr. Fury seconds. Discussion?
The reason for the emergency is this has to be filed with the county before March 31st, and if we don't put it on emergency, we have to wait 30 days.
Any further discussion? Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
The emergency clause passes 7-0. Now I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 16, 2020 as an emergency. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Barr seconds. Discussion? I just want to say that this was unanimously put forward from the Finance Committee. We spent a lot of time on this. We went through line by line. Thanks to everybody that was involved in this process. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin? Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr.
Sorry, I
Sc-
couldn't hear you. Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Ordinance 16, 2020 passes 7-0 as an emergency. Next up is ordinance 21, 2020.
An ordinance amending Section 147 of the codified ordinances of the City of Twinsburg regarding employees generally and declaring an emergency.
I'd like to make a motion to put ordinance 21, 2020 on its third and final reading and declare an emergency. May I have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Mr. Fury seconds. Discussion?
The reason for the emergency on this ordinance is the changes to the employee code. We want them to take effect as soon as possible.
Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
The emergency clause passes 7-0. Now I'd like to make a motion to adopt ordinance 21, 2020 as an emergency. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Stoffer seconds. Discussion? Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Ordinance 21, 2020 passes 7-0 as an emergency. Next up is resolution 29, 2020.
A resolution authorizing a conditional use permit for J.C. Landscaping Incorporated for parcel number 64-00516 located at 2152 East Aurora Road, Twinsburg, Ohio, as recommended by the Planning Commission.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution 29, 2020. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Scafidi seconds. Discussion?
Yeah, quickly, this was on the Planning Commission's agenda this past Monday, and what it is a proposed conditional use for outside storage, and it was passed by the Planning Commission 4-0.
Thank you, Mr. Scafidi. Any further discussion? Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Resolution 29, 2020 passes 7-0. Next up is resolution 30, 2020.
A resolution accepting a right-of-way donation and sidewalk and landscape easement unto the City of Twinsburg, Ohio from lot split for 10039 Darrow Road.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution 30, 2020. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Fury seconds. Discussion? Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Resolution 30, 2020 passes 7-0. Next up is Resolution 31, 2020.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with the Board of Education of the Twinsburg City School District pursuant to Chapter 755 of the Ohio Revised Code prescribing the leasing of school buses to the city of Twinsburg for the 2020 city recreation program.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 31, 2020. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Stoffer seconds. Discussion?
This is the contract for the camp busing. We're not sure where things are going for camp. As we work through the next couple months, we just would have this contract in place. If we use it, we'll be charged. If we don't, we won't.
Thanks, Mayor. Any further discussion? Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
yes,
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Resolution 31, 2020 passes 7-0. Next up is Ordinance 32, 2020.
An ordinance accepting the bid of Nero and Sons Incorporated for the 2020 sewer improvement project.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt Ordinance 32, 2020. May I have a second?
That's only on its first reading.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I apologize.
That's okay.
Do we want to put this on an emergency and clear it?
I believe Amy still has one other step to do, but she wanted to get the process started.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Finally, then, is Ordinance 33, 2020.
An ordinance granting the mayor temporary authority to deviate from the previously adopted regulations and policies in order to maintain continuity of the city operations during COVID-19 pandemic and declaring an emergency.
I'd like to make a motion to put Ordinance 33, 2020 on its third and final reading and declare an emergency. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Yield.
Mrs. Walker seconds. Discussion.
This we put together, as council knows, the city has Chapter 147, which deals with employees generally. Primarily employees that don't have a bargaining unit governing them, but it still has some language that governs even bargaining units. During this situation currently with the coronavirus, we have found ourselves in a need to deviate from Chapter 147 as need be. For example, we may have to have an employee perform some duties that wouldn't normally be that employee's job function in order to keep them busy or doing things during this time. We might have to change duty hours of that employee. We might have to amend the use of sick leave or not require a doctor's note on 3-day sick leave in order to get through this. So this would allow the mayor and those, what I would categorize as minor deviations, to be able to do that without reconvening council every time to make those onesie changes if need be. We also have policy manuals that council has adopted over the years that parrot those. So this would allow the mayor, and I put a date in there, I believe of July 1st, and we can revisit earlier if we have to, but it would allow the mayor in order to keep the city functioning.
Up through July 1st.
Correct.
Thank you. Anything else? Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
yes,
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
The emergency clause passes 7-0. Now I'd like to make a motion to adopt Ordinance 33, 2020 as an emergency. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Stoffer seconds. Any further discussion?
No, just in addition, we signed today a declaration of a state of emergency here in Twinsburg. It's been done at the state level, the county level, and the federal level. We wanted to be consistent with that as we move forward through this time and as we potentially pursue any type of reimbursements of any of the monies that we're paying out to our employees, or any of the additional expenses we're incurring because of COVID-19. So we can get council a copy of that, but that was put into place today in conjunction with this to make sure that we're covering all our bases.
Thank you, Mayor.
thank you,
Anything else? Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
yes,
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Ordinance 33, 2020 passes 7-0 as an emergency. Next, we're up to unfinished business, new business, and miscellaneous. I just want to start, I will give everybody an opportunity, I just want to start with Mr. Maestros. Have we had a discussion about how we are going to handle subsequent council meetings in light of COVID-19 and kind of how we're going to move forward?
We have, and while we don't have the details, I think we have the details on the idea moving forward. That being, tonight, obviously, our goal, and thanks for council for agreeing to move this up to tonight. Our concern was that if the governor issued a lock-in-place order before next Tuesday's council meeting, and we weren't able to pass the budget, we would have had to really scramble. So thanks for moving that up to tonight's special council meeting, and I assume there will be a motion made to cancel next Tuesday's, formally made. But going forward, and I think our next meeting, regular scheduled meeting, will be April 14th. Assuming we're in the same situation then that we are now, we will have a more robust ability for council if they want to call in remotely to be able to do that. Depending on the number of council members that do that, it might just be a situation where we broadcast live the audio version of those meetings. We will also have a system set up at that time for residents to participate in a remonstrance. We might ask council, right now we're thinking of asking council to move that remonstrance to the end of the meeting rather than the beginning that you traditionally have it, in order to have a email address for residents that are watching it live to email a question to the clerk of council that we will then forward to council regarding something that may or may not have happened in the meeting that they can address, and we'll have those questions and get them to you at the end of the meeting under a public participation section. This format, according to the Attorney General, complies with state law, complies with the Sunshine Law. We certainly want to give the residents an opportunity to participate. We think that this would do it. If we need to change, we're willing to change if that doesn't work. But we think that gives us enough time to get to notice out and get people to participate if need be.
Thank you. Mrs. Watt.
Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. I just want to let everyone know, particularly the one in Ward 2, to continue to adhere to the policies that are in place, not only from a local level and what Mayor Yates is doing for the employees and the city of Twinsburg, but also to the higher powers. So if they say stay in, please stay in and be healthy. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Scafidi?
Thank you. Good evening. Yeah, these are times that we have never seen, at least in my lifetime, and I know these are tough times, and I just want to commend the mayor and our law director and all the department heads here and everybody at the city for really clicking into gear as quickly as you did in putting all of these safety measures into place. Thank you for looking out for us, for our employees, for our residents. We truly appreciate it, and thank you for keeping us informed, the council, as you're going day to day. I know there's been some tough decisions made and some long hours, and we really appreciate everything you're doing to keep all of us safe. So that's all, and I hope everyone stays well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McFerrin?
Well, I'm going to say the same thing everyone else is. We certainly appreciate everyone's efforts during this time and for the safety of all our city employees and our residents. And I would just ask residents to look out for each other as we've always done in the past and come together. And it's a good time to complete, I guess, our 2020 consensus and absentee voting applications. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Fury?
Thank you. I would like to make a motion that we waive the 30-day waiting period for appeal number 01-2020.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Discussion is that this is the BP station that's being taken over by Circle K. They're putting a large diesel canopies in the back of the building so that you can speed fill those trucks, and they're looking for a 15 side setback waiver. So it was granted by the Board of Zoning Appeals unanimously, and that's it.
Any further discussion? Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
All right, that motion passes 7-0. Anything else, Mr. Chair?
Lastly, I just hope that everybody stays safe and healthy, and God bless you.
Thank you. Mrs. Stoffer?
You know, I think everybody said exactly what I'm thinking as well. Just stay safe. And I'm very grateful for everything you guys are doing. Thank you very much.
Mr. Barr?
Well, thank you. Good evening. Not to reiterate the sentiments of everybody thus far, but the sun will shine another day on all of us. It is darkest before the dawn, and we have some long, difficult times, I think, ahead of us. Be a good neighbor. Be compassionate. Look out for your fellow man. Just be good. And if, however it is, you pray to a higher power, I would ask you to just keep our first responders and our doctors and our nurses in your thoughts and prayers. They're integral to us seeing the other side of this. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. I'd like to make a motion to cancel the regular council meeting that was scheduled originally for Tuesday, March 24th. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Scafidi seconds. Obviously, the discussion is we're having this meeting tonight in lieu of that meeting in preparation for a potential further lockdowns. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Bellin?
Yes.
Mr. Scafidi?
Yes.
Ms. McFerrin?
Yes.
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mrs. Stoffer?
Yes.
Yeah, and the only other thing that I have, again, to echo everything that was said, do the right thing, be a good neighbor, be a good person, and God bless. Mayor?
Yeah, just, I guess, a couple things. You know, when you listen to the governor's directive today, if you know seniors in the community, please reach out to them, make sure they're okay, check on them. They're all, you know, sequestered, and so, you know, we just want to make sure we check on our neighbors. And then I just want to personally thank Dave and Sarah and Colette for all the work they've done. We've had tireless meetings for hours upon hours at a time, phone conferences. I had a tragic personal situation with a family member, and I was out of town for last week, and they kept me informed, and we had phone conferences, and they you know, really helped out in a lot of the initiatives that we've put into place. So couldn't have done that without them, so I just want to personally recognize them and tell them to buckle down, because it's not over yet. We got a lot more long hours ahead of us, and you know, I hope that we start seeing the downside of this, but I think it's going to ramp up before it does that. So that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Mr. Maestros?
Thank you. I'll be brief. I just thank everybody for their kind words. I appreciate it. I think you know, you should all be proud of your employees. It's been amazing this week. The employees have really had no idea what's coming. They've all been extremely patient with us as we work through different variations. And I want to tell you personally, you can all feel confident that the mayor has not surrounded himself with the yes people. There's been some heated discussions over the last few days, and I think all those discussions led us to right decisions. We'll see. But we remain flexible to make those changes. So police and fire, I just want to, again, shout out to them, thank them. They have not batted an eye. They haven't asked for anything. We've gone to them. They're just doing their job. It's impressive to see those guys just keep plugging away without even questioning what they're doing. So thanks for them. Thanks.
Mrs. Collins?
Nothing.
Mrs. Buccigas? All right. We do not have to excuse any absent members. And with that, we will adjourn at 6:34 p.m. Stay safe, everyone.
Thank you.